thank you again to Jennifer for this so inspiring contribution. Now, I think we should move to the LAMI session with 4 contributions about our action plan. The first one who will speak is Anna Mouti. Anna, please, the floor is for you. And Anna will speak about knowledge of society, courses and tests. Maybe we can wait a couple of minutes for people that are going to change the room. So, I think we can start in order also to maybe save 5 minutes more at the end before the coffee break for question and answers. And so the floor is for Anna.
Thank you, Lorenzo. Thank you all for being here. I'm really happy to be here. Kalimera. That was the Greek thing, okay. Kalimera se όλους. So, as you can see from the title, the focus of my presentation is knowledge of society, courses and tests. So I'm going to present our ongoing work of the ALTE LAMI group on exploring courses and tests in various countries, and also our goal to develop an awareness-raising report highlighting issues related to course and providing recommendations and good practices. So, as Lorenzo already mentioned, my presentation is one of the 7 work packages developed throughout our LAMI action plan for 2024-2026. So it is the work package 3, knowledge of society, courses and tests. And this is some history regarding this LAMI work package. So I would like to acknowledge our artistic director, Professor Cecilie Hamnes Carlsen, because of her contribution through her choosing artwork to be used in our work. So she's very enthusiastic, providing reasoning about the selection of specific artwork. So we may find her during the break for. So this was the first image that she brought into our discussions and is found in the Castel San Angelo in Rome. But the last one, the second one, is the steps from the Shantan, the arrival. So this was her latest contribution as an image to accompany our work. So you can see, me and Cecilie, so we're the leaders of this work package. You can see our LAMI group colleagues working on this field. And our first kickoff meeting was in February 2024, and the last was 1 week ago, so April 2026, in between various meetings, online, subgroups, and of course the face-to-face meetings in our LAMI 6. Yes. So, 2 main tasks in this work package. A survey of the nature of national course tests and courses, their scope, contents, language demands, test format and assessment criteria. That was scheduled for 2024-2025 and it is accomplished. And the second task, based on data collected, to develop an awareness-raising report highlighting the issues related to knowledge of society tests and courses with references to the Council of Europe Reference Framework of Competencies for Democratic Culture, which is scheduled for the 2025-2026. It is going really great in our scheduling, of course. Of course, to do these 2 main tasks, we had some complementary tasks to provide a systematic overview of information collected, a systematic overview of prior research, and in-depth description of content, format, structure of courses and tests in our respective countries. And we have also provided the short summaries in English. And of course, our report with policy recommendations and good practices. So, knowledge of society, okay? Yeah, so when people cross an international border to settle in a new country, they're likely to find the new society to differ to a smaller or larger extent from the society they left behind. So in the context of requirements for entrance, residence, or citizenship, knowledge of society typically refers to the knowledge of different rules, regulations, traditions, history and geography of the receiving country, sometimes also referred as civic knowledge. So fundamental knowledge about the receiving society can support migrants in their integration process and may therefore be empowering. However, a policy where migrants are required to pass formal course tests in order to either enter a country for family reunion purposes or to obtain residence or citizenship may violate migrants' fundamental human rights and exclude the most vulnerable migrants from a safe future, non-discrimination, and right to family life. So this is the case that the knowledge of society, okay, is a fundamental basis for both exercising one's duties and for claiming one's rights. But when the right to learn becomes a duty to learn, then we may have this real risk that cause functions not to empower and liberate, but rather to select and exclude. So there are many studies address cost test mainly as part of the language policy in the migration context, but not many to focusing specifically on the construct, on the content, on the consequences of the course in their own right. So what do we know about the cost test already? We have the Council of Europe and the ALTE survey. We have the work of the LAMI impact project toward the development of the LAPI. And of course, we have prior research on the field. Most of you might be aware of the Council of Europe and ALTE report, a study conducted in December 2018 and presented in the 2020 report, Linguistic Integration of Adult Migrants, where it covers 40 out of the 47 Council of Europe member states. Half of the states have course requirements for entry, residence, or citizenship. The tests typically cover history and geography, constitution and law, or customs and traditions of the host country, and almost always they are presented in the language of the host country, which is rather an implicit language test in that case. So you can go through this report. So we have information regarding the requirements for permanent residency, but also about the citizenship, where we have courses or tests or both. And we have specific information, for example, the contents, the topics covered in these tests. You cannot see probably very good, but the format, either paper-based or oral, and also only in 2 cases we have the cost test in languages other than the one of the receiving country. So it's Norway and Moldova. We had, of course, the impact project and the update of the information for the development of the LAPIM. We have data collected for 20 countries about language and course requirements, and all these countries covered. And, of course, it is the continuous interest of the LAMI group, as Lorenzo already mentioned, toward the new Council of Europe and ALTE survey on language policies for migrants in member states, scheduled for 2026-2027. Okay, so as a warm-up procedure for our new survey. These last years, we have focused on the course, courses, and tests in a more qualitative way. And in this presentation, we will also present some state-of-the-art of course, courses, and requirements for residents and citizens in 7 countries or contexts. So it's Greece, Italy, Norway, Romania, Spain, Finland, and the Esperanto community. We have colleagues that contributed to this already in this room. And all these contexts, these case studies, represent different patterns, either for permanent residence or citizenship and the naturalization processes. So the major point of divergence concerns whether course is operationalized primarily through courses, tests, or a combination of both. So course requirements are more consistently linked to citizenship, and in many cases also in permanent residence, but not for the temporal residence purposes or entry purposes. So Norway, Greece, Romania, Norway, Spain, and Finland from 2027 require course assessment for citizenship. Italy embeds course within the integration agreement for newly arrived migrants. But if you can see, we have different patterns in the different contexts. So through this qualitative work, we identified some good practices. Okay, for example, the multilingual approaches in the courses and tests that are considered a good practice when implemented, for example, in the case of Norway. Preparation materials reinforce transparency examination process and give migrants the opportunity to prepare for the test, but their format and accessibility vary considerably. So we have either past papers or item banks with or without answers provided, etc. None of our 7 cases has a course requirement for pre-entry or family reunion, so we consider this as a good practice. And exemption mechanisms are provided in all contexts, typically for minors, elderly applicants, or persons with disabilities. So, main challenge. Across all case studies, course requirements embody a central tension. They are presented as tools for integration and empowerment, yet they also operate as gatekeeping mechanisms that can reinforce inclusion. And this is the case that we already mentioned about the right to learn being made a duty to learn. And there is the real risk that the course functions not to empower and liberate, but to select and exclude. We have provided also some recommendations in the report to be presented. So recommendations to policymakers in relation to use and impact of courses, responsible use of courses and tests, inclusive use of courses and tests, integrative use, and flexible use, and of course recommendations in relation to course content itself for course providers and test developers. So, in a Council of Europe concept paper prepared for the seminar, The Linguistic Integration of Adult Migrants, Jean-Claude Biacot calls for more studies of the use, content, and consequences of courses and tests. You can see it will be important to analyze the knowledge expected should not be more than a citizen's average knowledge. So this current report responds to this Biacot call for research on courses, tests, and requirements, as we provide both an overview of prior research as well as presenting new insights through case studies from 7 countries, thereby contributing to the scholarly literature to this important but under-explored issue. So, by the end of the 2026, we're hoping for the launch of our report, hopefully with this cover. photo. Knowledge of society, core sentence and requirements, state-of-the-art and policy recommendations. The overarching aim of report is to provide research-based insights and practical experience to inform both policymakers and course courses developers and test providers about good practice and potential challenges and risks that knowledge of society, when used as requirement, may provoke. So we hope to contribute with helpful insights that can assist all in the field, so that the use of the course can be for the empowerment of migrants and their integration, respecting human rights and their dignity. So, thank you. Are we going to?
No, there will be time for question at the end of the whole session about LAMI work package. Okay, so before the coffee break.
So, in my presentation, I will continue this as a second of the 4 presentation on the ongoing work that we're doing in the LAMI SIG. And the focus of my presentation is on language assessment for access to work. So, more precisely, the use of language tests as requirements in the hiring process. I will first discuss the role of language assessments in relation to social justice and structural racism. Thereafter, I will present this ongoing LAMI project that aims at helping employers in setting appropriate language requirements for different jobs. Employers must balance several responsibilities. On the one hand, they need to ensure that the person they hire have the sufficient qualifications, including sufficiently high language proficiency to actually carry out the work in a good and safe manner. At the same time, they have to respect international and national anti-discrimination law. That's also something that they have to make sure. So striking this balance requires insights in the position they are hiring for, of course, but it also requires insights and knowledge about the CFR levels in Europe, about language proficiency, about what a test score signifies. So they need a certain level of language assessment literacy. Research findings from Norway and Europe indicate that employers often lack this assessment literacy. They typically have little knowledge about the CFR and its levels. They often do not fully understand what language tests measure or what a test score signifies. They often lack insight into the fact that most language users, also first language users, typically have uneven language profiles. So it typically perform better in some skills than in other skills. And they often do not know that they have the possibility to set differentiated requirements in the different skills. So, for instance, a lower requirement in written production than in oral communication, which is often what you need in jobs. So these points we investigated in a prior period of LAMI, where we investigated to what extent language test organizations provide tests that measure the 4 skills in separate parts of the test, and the extent to which employers take advantage of the possibility to set differentiated language requirements. In this report, which you can find on the LAMI webpage, we also underline that in order to set requirements that are justifiable, policymakers and employers should start by analyzing the real language needs necessary to perform a given task or to carry out a certain job. The basic idea of social justice is that all members of society should have equal access to fundamental rights, opportunities, and conditions. Examining social justice, therefore, involves assessing the fairness of a society's distribution of wealth, privileges, and opportunities. And labor market integration is central to achieving those rights and privileges. As we've heard from Jennifer's speech, structural racism is a serious obstacle. It's also a serious obstacle in achieving social justice and access to the labor market. And I've chosen deliberately a picture of a town without people to illustrate that the intentions of individual actors are largely irrelevant to the study of structural racism. As Bonilla Silva underlines, or he calls it a racism without racists. So what matters is to reveal the invisible structures and the discriminatory consequences they have for groups that are being marginalized. And it is important to underline that those structures can have racially unjust consequences even without racist intentions. So we can all be part of a system which upholds those structures. There is a large body of research on ethnic discrimination in the hiring process and in the labor market from many different countries. And the findings of these studies clearly show that foreign applicants or applicants with a foreign-sounding name are systematically discriminated against in the hiring process. The chances of being called for an interview is significantly and substantially lower if you have a foreign-sounding name. To treat people differently because of their ethnicity, religion, or color of their skin is not only prohibited by law, it is also often, at least used to be, socially inappropriate. I mean, even neo-Nazis wouldn't claim that they are racists, so it's not something that people say. And this is where language and linguistic discrimination comes into place. Flores and Rosa coined the term racial linguistics to emphasize that language and language varieties can function as proxies or stand-in for race, and it comes across as more legitimate. Another central term in relation to linguistic discrimination is this term native speakerism. The underlying assumption is that native speakers always have a better command of the language than second language users. It also implies that all native speakers have a perfect command of the language. These are false assumptions. Although native speakers typically have a strong intuitive knowledge of L1 grammar and they normally have perfect pronunciation, they vary considerably when it comes to vocabulary breadth, writing and reading skills, oral presentation skills, etc. Not all first language speakers of English could do what I do now in a second language. So second language speakers may in many areas outperform first language users. And of particular relevance to labor market discrimination is the fact that accented speech is often interpreted as a sign of poor language proficiency. And finally, a relevant form of linguistic discrimination occurs when language employers set inappropriate language requirements in the hiring process. This can mean requirements are set too high. So, for instance, demanding a B2 level or a C1 level, like an academic level, for practical occupations, right? For taxi driver, for a bus driver, for assistant in the kindergarten. You don't need to be able to write an academic text to do that important work, but it is a work of a different kind. And just to show that language requirements can have very concrete consequences for labor market integration, I brought this graph from Norway. It shows the effect of introducing a B2 requirement for healthcare assistance from non-EU countries in Norway. So before the requirement was introduced in 2017, around 1,000 healthcare assistants, mainly from the Philippines and from Serbia, received authorization to practice their occupation in Norway. After this introduction, that group just disappeared from the labor market. It's now between 4 and 34 people every year that manage that higher level. Another study that we did was to look into what CFR levels are actually asked for in different job vacancies. The CEFR project was led by Miriam Schmaus and Edith Bugge, my colleague, and I were participants in this study. And here we looked at almost 90,000 job vacancies to see what language requirements are actually set. And as this table shows, almost all job advertisements mentioned language requirements for non-native speakers. In 90% of the cases, these requirements were formulated in a non-standardized way. So, must master Norwegian or must speak and write Norwegian perfectly, and so on. While in 10% of the cases, there was a CFR-based requirement. And when a CFR level was mentioned, the requirement was typically set at a B2 level. We also broke this down into different sectors and occupations and found that the B2 level is often required in positions where experts found the requirements to be too high, such as practical jobs that require non-academic skills and little, if any, writing. So we can ask ourselves, why is this? Why do employers set inappropriate language requirements? We can't rule out the possibility that it could be because they use language as a proxy for race. They don't want to hire a foreigner. That is one possibility. Another possibility is that they don't really know what the test score means. They don't understand the CFR levels and their meaning. That's another possibility. If they choose to set certain requirements that are either too high or unstandardized, unspecified, because they want to assess this themselves through the interviews, it's hard to know, and it's hard to do something about. You had to work like differently on attitudes and that kind of thing. If, on the other hand, the reason is because they lack knowledge and they lack language assessment literacy, that is something that is easier to rectify, I would say. And this brings us to this project, this LAMI project that we are working on. It takes as a starting point that employers need assistance, that they don't mean to discriminate, but they don't know what level would be appropriate. So what we are doing here is that we are developing a digital needs analysis, which very nicely, it's the acronym DNA, to assist employers in setting the appropriate language requirements. This needs analysis will ask questions to employers that do not require any knowledge of language tests or the CFR. It only requires that they know the position they are hiring for. So the questions will be related to the needs that the employee will need to carry out the job in a good way. And the outcome will be that they get concrete recommendations in the 4 skills, so a profiled outcome saying what language level based on their responses would be considered appropriate. This will be presented as a recommendation, not as like this is the answer, right? But this is something to help you, to guide you if you are in search of setting a CFR level or using a given test. So I would just very briefly show you. Now, maybe this is hard to see. It's like a little too bright, perhaps. But this is just a first peep of the prototype that we are working on together with Innovate, which is a Norwegian programming company. So this is very much a work in progress still. But the employer will first have a page where they get a little bit of information about the tool. They will be able to choose between different languages. Now it's just Norwegian and English to start with. And they can choose one of 4 broad sectors. And these are sectors that we know from prior research that are sectors where language requirements are often linked to CFR levels. Then they will get like a brief presentation of the different skills. And then they will get concrete questions related to the job. So for instance, I don't know if you can read. So during a normal working day, the employee needs to be able to write logs, reports, and summaries that are easy to understand despite some errors. And then they can choose different response categories. And that kind of questions they will get in all the 4 skills. So speaking, listening, and reading. And in the end, they will get a profiled recommendation. So the next step of this, we will continue to work with the programmers to get an, how to say, yeah, so that it looks as good as we want. Then we are going to pilot the tool in selected countries, revise it, translate it to more language, and finally disseminate it. And hopefully this can be some kind of guidance for employers when setting language requirements. So that was my final slide, I think. So with this, I just want to thank the ALTE LAMI working group who have worked with me on this important work, and José Pascual, who is co-leading it with me. I also thank Innovate for digitalizing the DNA, and ALTE for support in paying Innovate for doing their jobs. So thank you for listening.
I'm going to present now the part of the LAMI work coordinated by a dear colleague and friend. Unfortunately, Dina is not able to be present today. Let me send her a big hug on behalf of all. I will focus on the outcomes of Work Package 6, conducted in strict collaboration with another group in ALTE, the less widely tested languages, chaired exactly by Dina. Within the 4 words of JEDI, 2 in this work package seem a bit more underlined. Integration of adult migrants within the learning environment and, in a broader perspective, in the whole society. And above all, diversity. On the one hand, as present in the multilingual space of the classroom. On the other hand, diversity as represented by learners' plurilingual repertoires. It means respect and value linguistic diversity. In this case, supporting and creating the conditions for using migrants' home languages in the classroom. As highlighted also by the Council of Europe recommendation on the importance of plurilingual and intercultural educations, see in particular policy and practice measures B9 and B12. So, the use of learners' first languages in second language courses is at the center of the work coordinated by Dina. And according to this purpose, I'm going to better define the project in terms of stages, participants, findings, and preliminary conclusions. This project provided 4 different phases. The starting point was the development, the piloting, the translation, and the digitalization of 2 multilingual survey questionnaires available for the target respondents, learners in 9 languages and teachers in 10 language versions. Both the questionnaires were used in a variety of countries with a collection of 324 responses from learners and 239 from teachers. Then, the working group analyzed data and started to formulate conclusions that will lead to recommendations as a final step. Our target participants were third country nationals, adults, involved in second language courses, including asylum seekers and refugees, so-called economic migrants, and people who entered in the host country for family reunion. More in detail about the second language courses, the majority of respondents were students in A2 courses, followed by pre-A1 and A1. Among the 52 countries of origin, these are the first 9, with India as the most representative, followed by Ukraine and Pakistan. Both teachers and learners questionnaire were structured in order to address, of course, with a different wording and a different metalinguistic degree, these two research questions. Taking into account the first one. So, to what extent are migrants' first languages used in the language courses? It's always good to start with good news, with something positive. Both teachers and learners say that the use of first languages in class was not only allowed, but also encouraged. Then we asked, but in which circumstances this use happens? And among the given options, the following here listed are the most selected. At first place, there is the explanation of vocabulary at word level. Then, the teachers need to check, also thanks to the home languages, the comprehension of instructions of task before its administration. We can see the constructive analysis as implicit in points 4 and 5. And finally, it's evident the teaching attempt of searching for the support of home languages when knowledge of society contents are embedded in second language courses, especially more abstract topics. This list, as you can see, considers when first languages are used. But another interesting angle was to investigate how they are used. In this case, the central role of peer mediation is evident. It means that the most recurrent situations are those where a student works mediating languages, mediating communications, mediating text on benefit of one or more classmates. This value and this dimension of human mediation within the learning environment from teachers and even more from students themselves is something that deserves to be pointed out. Taking into account the second research question, so is the use of migrant first languages in the language courses useful? Also in this case, good news. The learners say the use of our languages help to learn the new language. And the positive perception, as you can see, is confirmed also by teachers. Once established that the use of first languages helps in learning the second language, the next step is to try to explain why. And in this case, the emotional impact has for sure positive consequences. It makes me feel more confident. I feel less stressed, is the answer of learners. Not the same clear consensus for the statement relating this help to the preservation of culture and language heritage. How we could interpret this distribution of respondents? Maybe we could argue that such preservation is perceived as more embedded within the personal domain rather than in the educational domain, but for sure further investigations are needed. In my personal view, here there is the essence of the real teaching challenges. Why, I would say, fortunately, only 9% of teachers say that the use of migrant first languages is a waste of time. A high percentage of learners, 41%, agree with this statement. And this outcome could be, seems only apparently, in my view, inconsistent with the previous results. The point is that learners can feel as a waste of time the use of home languages different from the ones that are first languages for them. That's the point. That's probably the main issue. In case of classes with a common target language, second language, accompanied by a common first language, everything is well perceived from both sides, teachers and learners. But when we have more first languages, as it often happens, it's challenging for teachers to manage their use to the extent that it could be a problem to overcome the perception of wasting time when a learner is not asked to use neither the second language as target language nor a language of his or her plurilingual repertoire. These aspects need further investigation, as well as another next step for this project will be the collection of practical, concrete examples of classroom activities aimed at encouraging the use of different home languages. So it seems we have still space for work for the next LAMI project plan. Thank you on behalf of Dina. Just 1 second to have a glass. Okay, this is my part. So on behalf of me, according to the opening of the forum, my contribution is focused on another one LAMI work package, in this case the one related to actions around LAT. LAT stands for LAMI LASLLIAM Assessment Tools. So practical tools developed, built on the LASLLIAM reference guide. It's a Council of Europe reference guide, and LASLLIAM stands for Literacy and Second Language Learning for the Linguistic Integration of Adult Migrants. So it's a guide describing the complex double parallel process of acquiring literacy while learning a second language, or if you prefer, acquiring literacy in the second language. Okay? LAT addresses the sensible topic of assessing LESLLA learners, so low-literate migrants, in coherence with the LASLLIAM reference guide. It's available in 13 different language versions, with the last one, the Arabic version, added a few weeks ago, thanks to the work done by Professor Amiad Talafeh Zayed and Mohamed Al-Kara, that I would like to thank. This morning I presented the outcome of a project that involved the delisted LAMI colleagues in collecting LESLLA multilingual performances according to the use of LAT. This collection was felt as needed, highly needed, in order to offer factual examples of LESLLA at the 4 LASLLIAM levels, establishing consistent benchmarks across languages, supporting educators in assessing learners' progress, in tailoring teaching materials, as well as in better defining teaching goals within curricula. These aims are related, I would say, to a double continuity. First, in terms of consistency of LAMI actions over the time. In my conclusion, in the last international conference in Madrid, I had highlighted the need for language testers to, in some sense, to extend the scope, for instance, by developing practical tools, LAT in this case, within a broader action sustaining the alignment between learning, teaching, and assessment at European level. The second continuity is in terms of consistency between LAMI actions and Council of Europe actions. Indeed, this project can be defined as LASLLIAM benchmarking, fully in line with the CEFR benchmarking in 2006-2007. Both have in common the rationale to provide same format for different languages to collect oral examples plus guidance for benchmarking seminars. In comparison to the CEFR benchmarking limited to oral, LAMI considered also written examples, fundamental with the low-literate migrants, with the opportunity to collect performances based not only on the same format, but also exactly on same tasks, so the ones piloted and validated by LAT. The LASLLIAM benchmarking provided two main steps: data collection, then seminars, and two needs, with participants only LESLLA learners attending language courses targeted to them. The two needs. The first need was harmonizing the collection in different countries, of course, thanks to same procedures, same guidelines, same tools, also aimed at describing the learning environment and collecting fundamental background information of each learner involved. The second need was harmonizing the seminars with two phases: familiarization with the LASLLIAM scales and descriptors, and evaluation of the learner's performances. More in details. In phase 1, participants are first asked to underline keywords of the two overall scales for written production and oral interaction. Then they are asked to reorder the descriptors of the two specific scales here mentioned that reflect the can-do statements more aligned, yes, with the LAT tasks used to collect performances. After each activity, a plenary discussion aims to raise awareness, particularly in relation to the definiteness of the descriptors. It means, for instance, that with regard to the overall oral interaction scale, three progressions are shared: the can-dos, here highlighted in green, the content and context in yellow, the syntax and the vocabulary in red. What you see as text in blue, descriptor in blue, means that the LASLLIAM descriptors is taken from the CFR companion volume descriptors, more precisely from pre-A1 in case of LASLLIAM level 3 and from A1 in case of LASLLIAM level 4. These sustain the alignment between the two Council of Europe references by highlighting their partial overlapping. After the observation of each performance, 2 rounds of individual levels assignment are provided according to the same guidance used for the CFR benchmarking. In round 1, each participant is asked to assign 1 LASLLIAM level, and the sharing of the distribution of respondents, thanks to an instant survey, is followed by a plenary discussion to reach consensus in this case. In round 2, each participant is asked to take his or her final decision, confirming or changing the initial assignment in the light of the discussion, of course. In order to show the LASLLIAM benchmarking in practice, let me refer to the Italian experience with 63 performances collected, then pre-selected for seminars according to these 4 criteria: completeness of background information, representativity of different learning environments, state schools, associations, NGOs, also different Italian regions, and the representativity, of course, of learners' profile, gender, age, country of origin, but also years of schooling within the range 0-5, so LESLLA learners, arrival in the host country, hours of second language at the time of the administration of the task. And finally, double output for each learner in order to reconstruct the whole literacy and language profile and to check to what extent the oral competency maybe diverges in comparison to the written one. 3 video recorded online seminars involved for more than 10 hours, 15 highly experienced LESLLA teachers who had the task to benchmark 28 performances. These were presented with different code numbers for the same learner to avoid that the written benchmarking could influence the oral one and vice versa. The main result was the target consensus, more than 80% in green in the slide, was reached in relation to all the 4 LASLLIAM levels, but for all written. 5 green profiles came out, It means consensus for both the dimension, oral and written, in relation to a same learner. The next slides offer concrete examples of progressions in writing from level 1 to level 4 in Italian. The bullet points summarize the background information of the learner who produced what reported. The instruction from LAT were in this case copy the 3 words as in the example, so copy. And the achieved consensus was that this performance is well reflected by these LASLLIAM level 1 descriptors. So can write on a line, can write personally relevant word by copying. Now, the instructions from LAT were write what you see in the picture as in the example. And in this case, the achieved consensus was that the performance is well reflected by these LASLLIAM level 2 descriptors. So can make a note, for instance, work hard for vocabulary, learning by writing practiced words. Practiced means words already trained within the language course. So not new words. Here the instructions from LAT were write a self-presentation, as in the example again, and the achieved consensus was that the performance is well reflected by these LASLLIAM level 3 descriptors. Creative writing can write short, simple phrases with the example in the descriptors exactly reflecting what the women wrote. Yes. And also can write short and simple sentences with frequent words and formulaic expressions. Finally, these last examples refer to the same task as before, here eliciting a higher performance. The achieved consensus was that it is well reflected by these LASLLIAM level 4 descriptors. In particular, we can notice 6 sentences and 1 self-correction. Of course, in the final LASLLIAM benchmarking report, you will find also evidences of spoken performances with the video we collected and we benchmarked. Just to give you an idea, let's see around 90 seconds showing an example of LASLLIAM level 2 in oral. The example is given by the same women with the written production benchmarked a bit higher at LASLLIAM level 3.
Ciao. Ciao. Benvenuta. Bene, tu come stai? Bene. Io sono Simona. Tu? Come ti? Io sono Fanta. Un po' Fanta, se sei. Parli italiano? Ciò cosa sei? In Sierra Leone sei andata a scuola? Simone. Poco. Quanto tempo? 1 anno, 2 anni, 3 anni? 2 anni. 2 anni, 2 anni. Ok. Io sono un insegnante, maestra. E tu che lavoro fai? Tu sei i studenti. Da quanto tempo sei qui in Italia? Io tempo in Italia. Tu che cosa fai durante il giorno? Quando io al lavoro mi piace guardare la TV o stare con gli amici. A te cosa piace fare? Mi piace fare? Sì, cosa ti piace fare? Mi piace studiare. Studiare? Ti piace studiare? Sì. Solo studiare? Mangiare e dormire? Studiare, mangiare e dormire. Oh, perché?
Okay, according to LASLLIAM level 2, she can answer to simple questions for personally relevant information by using familiar words and formulaic expressions like poco poco. In one case, she doesn't understand the question, asking to switch into English. Her performance is within the range 1, maximum 4 words per turn. Not more than 4 words per turn. She never asks, she only answers. No proper sentence level is present, even if there are attempts in this sense. Io, tempo, Italia, un anno. I, time, Italy, 1 year. Or with a short list of verbs in infinitive mode. Studiare, mangiare, dormire, to study, to eat, to sleep. Other LASLLIAM benchmarking experiences concluded already in Malta for English, thanks to the work done by Fabiana Pica, and planned already in Greece, Norway, Romania, and Portugal. So please contact us for being involved. We have at disposal well-piloted tools and format, so we would be more than happy to welcome more LASLLIAM benchmarking experiences. Thank you. Incredibly, we saved 5 minutes for questions. So there is time for questions concerning not only this last contribution, but all the 4 in the slot about LAMI action plan. So maybe...
Hello. I have a question for the previous research about the teachers. These students were allowed to speak their native language in the classroom, right? But the teachers, did they understand the native language of the students? Or it was only the students who spoke their native language?
In few cases, teachers can understand the languages, but often mainly formulaic expressions and few words. So the issues is also for teachers. That's the reason why in many second language courses for migrants, we have also the role and the presence of a cultural mediator to help teachers in this triangle, including home languages.
But did you try to find teachers who can speak the native language of the students and to teach them the L2 language, the second language?
Yeah, there are a few cases, absolutely. We collected also this kind of information in the first part of the teacher questionnaire. For instance, there are questions about the language repertoire of teachers are provided with a list of languages, including mainly the migrants' languages.
Thank you.
Welcome. Yes, please.
Thank you. So I wanted to ask, it would be for the two of you, also because of the research done in Norway. Do you think once LASLLIAM gets more spread, that it could help in the language job requirements with more practical jobs? Do you think that the employers would, rather ask for L levels rather than academic levels like B2, B1? Or do you think they wouldn't really pay attention to that?
I can only reply for Norway. It's 25 years since the CFR appeared, and we've had several studies on what employers know about the CFR and the CFR levels, and it's not much. I would assume that after so many years with the CFR and CFR-based language tests that we've had since 2005, that we would have managed to inform the employers better. But my experience is that both employers and also the policymakers who make decisions about requirements have very little knowledge about it. So that's why we've come to like this project that we're doing, that just try another way than just trying to get employers understand the CFR level and language, because if you are not a language person at all, it's things we take for granted is like, it's difficult to think. I think about my old dad who used to employ people. He wouldn't understand the first part of it. I mean, so I think that I think it's a bit optimistic to think that we would manage to get employers to embrace it and understand it and things like that. But I do think that as language test providers, we should also have like web pages directed at employers, trying to explain, like the Norwegian Directorate for Higher Education and Skills do in a very good way, I would say. They have a web page that is for employers, saying like, are you hiring non-native speaking employees? These are the things you need to think about. So that's like one way of getting it out. But do employers know that that directorate exists? Do they know where to find their webpage? I don't know. Yeah. But of course, we do try to also, when there are like gatherings of employers, employer organizations, we try to also reach the audience through that. But it's, I would hope, we should be hopeful that could happen.
Thank you very much.
Yes, if I can add something, I think that the main outcome of this project should be allow a better raising awareness in employers. First, concerning the uneven profile required for the job, and in this case, it could partially help LESLLA learners by highlighting the importance first to the oral dimension, but not forgetting the importance also of reading, for instance, for secure at workplace, for security reasons. So the second outcome, having in mind always the long-term perspective of improving connections between our work and teaching, is to make more aware employers about the need of profiling language courses according to what required again in terms of tasks at the workplace. Sarah. The mic.
Time is up. Oh, time is up. But you can. Well,
Maybe last one.
We can have a last question. I think.
Last from Sarah.
Thank you. It's not so much a question, it's just a comment. I found the presentations very interesting, so thank you. But the people who were at my presentation yesterday would have seen that for this year we have 3 work strands. One of them is the survey with ALTE, but the other one is looking at the misuse and the misunderstandings around the CEFR. And I think these 2 strands are actually very closely linked. And I think it would be useful to have you on board with the strand looking at the misuse and the misunderstandings of the CEFR based on the work that you're doing. I think it's unrealistic to think that employers will understand the CEFR. It's not their job. It's not their job to do so. It's our job to get the key message to them about the profiling. But, you know, even in school systems, profiling doesn't happen. You know, we still have by the end of upper secondary flat B1 or flat B2. So the problem is bigger than that. But I think it's really important that we bring this together. And one of the ideas for our strand on the misuse of the CEFR would be sample job adverts for employers, good examples and problematic examples and why. So it would be really good if we could work together on that. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So thank you all. Enjoy the coffee break and come back for the next presentation, please.